everyone, and welcome. I'm just going to lead us through the basic interface of Photoshop, and I want to take a few minutes to just look over where everything is located and kind of give you a guide to go by really quickly to just make sure you know where everything is at and how to open a new document as well, and the settings that you'll be looking for when you do that. So to begin with, I'm actually going to start with opening a new document so I can demonstrate a couple of other things. So I'm going to go up to the top menu and do File and New, and it actually put that on my other monitor. I'll drag it over, and you're going to get a window that looks like this. Right now, I have mine on a preset for a 1920 by 1080 pixels. I have it set to pixels because I was designing something for a computer screen last time I used this, and that's the size that I wanted. What we're going to do is actually switch it over here just for demonstration purposes to one of the presets, which is US paper. So if I move it over there, you'll see it switches to 8.5 inches by 11 inches. Obviously this is a computer screen, so it doesn't actually measure by inches, it measures by pixels. So with that you had to have an additional number here, which is the resolution, or pixels per inch. The default state for a piece of paper for something that you intend to print is 300, a resolution of 300 pixels per inch. You can also alter your color mode. We'll talk more about that in class, but I'm just going to hit OK, and this will give me a blank page. Alright, the first thing I want to draw attention to in Photoshop is the Layers palette over here in the bottom right hand corner. You'll notice that was locked. I clicked the padlock to unlock it. Just because it puts in a default background layer that is locked, and you can't do anything with it when it's locked. So click the icon, the padlock icon, to undo that feature. Now the next thing I'll do is I'm just going to go over here, and this is my toolbar on the left. This contains all of the tools that you'll use whenever you're creating something from scratch or editing something like a photo. I actually just went ahead and clicked the brush, because that is what I'm going to use to kind of indicate a thing or two within the canvas. Now that I've done that, I can pull down here. You can see where the cursor is at. This is actually my color picker. It has two colors, a main color and alternate, which you can switch by hitting the little arrows that point back and forth. That's in case you're working on something that has two colors and you want to switch. Not really an often used feature, but it's confusing if you don't know why there's two colors. So if I double click on that, it's going to bring up a color picker, which again it's bringing up off screen, so I have to pull it over, and it looks something like this. This is actually a really easy to use color picker. It's very simple. You move along the rainbow using the bar on the right, and then you go in and actually shift around within the box, to the right for greater saturation, to the left for less, darker at the bottom, lighter at the top. So that's the basics of how the color picker works, and you'll notice all these numbers are changing as I'm doing this. That's so you can indicate very precisely one color to the next. These numbers down here, which in this case is BB977F, or you can actually copy and paste, and if you paste them into another program, it will, such as Illustrator, for example, you'll be able to access that same color. Now in the layers palette that I mentioned before, you can see this is my only layer in existence right now. Down at the bottom of it are several important buttons that we'll be using throughout the semester, one of which is the new layer button. If I click that, you'll see a new layer appear here above the current one. Now I can draw on that layer, just as I'm doing here, something really beautiful. And then you'll notice that it is on the one listed as layer 1, which I'll actually double click on the name and change it to say writing, and then I'll change this one at the bottom, again double click on the name and change it to background. So these are completely separate, they do not interfere with each other, and this is the basis for how everything works in Photoshop. For example, using the eye icon next to this layer, I can toggle it on and off. I can even delete it out without interfering. So I'm going to create a couple of new layers here. With one, I'll sketch out something just as I did, and then with another one, I'll switch to another color. Whatever layer you have selected, it is highlighted, you can see it down here. Whatever layer you have selected is the one that is currently active, and that is what you're working on. Always be aware of what you have selected, because that's how most mistakes are made if you work on the wrong layer. What this allows me to do is to work on top and have access to different elements of my design without having to go in and erase anything I've laid in on top of it. I can also, if I need to, take, for example, layer 1 here and click and drag above layer 2, and now that is the layer on top. I can even use my arrow tool, which I'll talk about here in just a second, to move this around. So layers is the basis for everything in Photoshop. Everything happens in the layer palette. Always have an eye down there. The thing that I do want to talk about in terms of the toolbar, again, I'm not going to go into great detail because we're going to look at lots of different tools in different videos as well as in class. But that you do want to pay attention to which one I have selected up here. The move tool, the arrow at the top. The arrow at the top is where you should always return to. Even if you're using a different tool at the time, I'm using the eraser here to kind of take little chunks out of that. Always go back to your arrow. If ever you get stuck, something's not working, go back to your arrow. A lot of times that will fix it. This is your default position. Always return there. And that's pretty much it for the basic elements here. I just mostly want in this video for you to understand how to open a new document, where the layer palette is and what it does, and where the toolbar is, and the location of the arrow/move tool, which you're going to be returning to constantly whenever you're in a design.